Coffee with Colin, thanks for joining me. I visited my son Stephen in London this week, and of course while I was preparing for a trip to London, a show in the West End came to mind. We thought we might take one in, didn't have time this time as it happens, but as I was Googling some shows to consider, I stumbled across the fact that Joseph and his amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat is coming back after all these years. I wore my coat with golden lining, etc., etc., right? Anyway, it got me thinking about the story of Joseph as told in the Bible, and I drew some parallels between the story of Joseph and many of us out there who are dreamers. You see, Joseph was a dreamer, and his brothers didn't like that, his family didn't like that, because he was upsetting the status quo. And they sort of picked on him a bit and said, listen, you know what's going on here? Your dad was a shepherd, his dad was a shepherd, we're shepherds, you're going to be a shepherd too. You get rid of these fancy notions. But Joseph wouldn't give in, right? So they decided that they'd get rid of him, and they tried to kill him. And then when that didn't work out, because one of his other brothers took pity on him, they decided that they'd sell him to some passing traders. So anyway, the bell Joseph was sold at age 17 to this caravan, taken off to Egypt and sold into Potiphar's household. And then two things happened over time in Potiphar's household. Number one, Joseph's skills came to be, and Potiphar ended up making him head of his household. So basically he was in charge. So the guy, the dreamer that the brothers got rid of, ended up being in charge of Potiphar's household. And then Potiphar's wife decided to take a fancy and take a punt, and that went awry. And when Potiphar heard about it, he lost the plot and threw Joseph into prison. Well, what's that got to do with your journey and my journey? Well, I'm a dreamer, and perhaps you are too. And the problem with us dreamers is we see the world a little bit differently than a lot of people. And some of those people that we see differently to can get their noses put out of joint, and they can try and thwart our plans. Now, I'm hoping nobody's trying to sell you into slavery, and certainly nobody's trying to sell me into slavery, but you know, there can be this thing like, don't be messing with the status quo. Isn't everything fine? Wasn't everything fine in our day? Why can't you just be happy with what you have? But if you're a dreamer, well then perhaps you'll never be happy with what you have. And I'm saying hats off to that. That's okay. That's okay. Be content with what you have, but strive for more. If you've got a dream in your heart, go for it. But be prepared for those that are going to try and get in your way or try and talk you out of it. And many of them will try and talk you out of it for very good, legitimate reasons, and they genuinely care about you, and they don't want to see you getting hurt or see your dreams shattered perhaps, and that you might be disappointed. But that said, it's not up to anybody else how you live your life. It's entirely up to you how you live your life. Anyway, so what happened next in Joseph's journey? He got thrown into prison, and he was languishing there, and the next thing, Pharaoh's cupbearer and his baker also got thrown into prison, because Pharaoh got his nose out of joint about something. Threw into prison. The two boys were there, and they had mad dreams. And Joseph basically interpreted their mad dreams, basically told the cupbearer he'd be put back in Pharaoh's company, and told the baker that it was game over. And that's indeed what happened. So it would appear the baker got his comeuppance, and the cupbearer went back to his position bearing the cup for Pharaoh. Before the cupbearer left prison, Joseph said, "Don't forget me." And he said, "No, I won't forget you." But he did forget him, right? And there's Joseph languishing in prison for another couple of years, until one day Pharaoh had a dream. And because the cupbearer was in the inner sanctum bearing the cup for Pharaoh, he would have heard the conversations going on, and he decided to take his own life in his hands, because you remember Joseph, who had interpreted his dream and the baker's dream correctly. And he basically said to Pharaoh, "Hope you don't mind me interrupting here, but there's this young fella in prison, and this is what he did for us, and he might be able to do the same for you." Pharaoh says, "Right, bring him here." And Joseph was brought into Pharaoh's presence. Pharaoh explained his dream, two dreams. They both meant the same thing. Basically, Joseph interpreted 7 years of prosperity followed by 7 years of famine, and you better plan for the famine in the 7 years of prosperity. Pharaoh said, "I wonder who's the wisest man in all of Egypt that could prepare such a feat." And he thought Joseph is the only man for the job. So Joseph gets promoted yet again, this time straight out of prison, to be number 2 in all of Egypt, with nobody above him except Pharaoh. Happy days. Age 30 at this stage, took Joseph 13 years. He was sold into slavery at age 17, and 13 years later at age 30, he was basically running Egypt. Not bad. But he held on to his dream. He held on to his dreaming. He stayed hopeful through all that period, despite all the evidence to the contrary. So what's all that got to do with you and me in the 21st century? Well, I believe Joseph had a job to do. The universe had plans for Joseph. And I believe you've got a job to do, and I've got a job to do. What is it? No idea what yours is. I'm trying to figure out what mine is, right? But I'm open to it. And I'm a dreamer, and I'm an achiever, and I'm capable. And you're a dreamer, and you're an achiever, and you're capable. So I've no idea what your role is, but whatever it is that's on your heart, step out in that direction and see what happens. And as I said earlier, some people out of genuine love and concern may try to knock you off and, hold you back. Don't let them. Be kind to them, but don't let them. Keep moving forward. Be respectful to them and move on. I heard it said that a man of integrity expects to be believed, and when he's not, he lets time prove him right. God's delays are not God's denials. A great work requires a great and careful training. Took Joseph 13 years of great and careful training to be worthy of and ready for the role in Egypt. You're perhaps going through that fallow period at this moment in time, and if you are, be grateful for it. You're being trained for something better, and I'm excited to find out what that might be. And just to remind you, all together now, I close my eyes, drew back the curtain. Finish it yourself. So thank you for joining for this week's Coffee with Colin. I hope and trust as ever you got something from it. Please consider what's been shared here today and apply it into your thinking for this next week. And then equally as importantly, come back next week and we'll share another coffee together and I'll ruminate on some other aspect of life and business. Between now and then, get some great coffee for sure, get some fresh air, get some R&R. If you spend a lot of time alone, I recommend you go meet some people. Conversely, spend too much time with people, I recommend you spend a little time alone. And then when the time is right, and only when the time is right, get your head back in the game, get organised for the week ahead, get stuck in, make next week count. I'll see you here this time next week for another Coffee with Colin. Slán. I love great coffee. Talk to you soon. Bye for now.